Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another 21st Century Renaissance and another open interest newsletter breakdown on GameStop. I'm your host, Dr. Michael LoPiano, enjoying another beautiful day, another day to give thanks for the beauty of creation as we continue on with our reading from the second book of Genesis. We will also be talking about some GameStop today, thinking about what's going to come down the pipe for us in terms of September OPEX, what we should expect today, what things are looking like, let's say chart-wise, let's say what's looking like it's coming down the bend. So we will spend some time talking about that. Before we do, of course, we will continue on with our reading from the book of Genesis. And we are taking a look today at the tail end of this first portion of the second of the creation accounts, the anthropocentric creation account from the book of Genesis. Has this very helpful title here, which is The Creation of Woman. But of course, that's not, that is not original to the text. We, of course, have this first story from Genesis 1, right? Which, even though it is a later story, it is of a deeper and a more holistic vision. This is why it is sequenced first. It is put first in priority to this older creation account, but which is much more local, which is much smaller scale in its scope. Of course, in that first account, man and woman are created at the same time, right? That is, in Genesis 1, man and woman come into being as two parts of a greater whole. They come into existence at the same time. It is not sequential. This story, being anthropocentric, it should be noted, right, is also, what might we say? RNO-centric, centric, of course, being, that would be a combination of a Greek root and a Latin root. I guess masculo-centric without werocentric, something like that. It's important to remember, right, that a lot of the stories that we come across in our ancient literature, right, that these stories were written as manuals or as guides for men, right? That is not necessarily as let's say as universities or as academia or postmodern theory or feminist theory might say, oh, this is done with evil intent or to oppress women or something like that. No, right? Men, we need to figure out what it is that we need to do in this world, right? It's why we're making things like this. It's why most people who watch YouTube are men. It's why most people on Twitter are men. It's why only half of Instagram is women, right? So most of these information conveying media, right? They are there in essence. They are built, let's say, initially by men and then used by men in order to get access to the information they need to live or thrive or compete or what have you, right? Like that is the driver, let's say, of the creation of cultural knowledge in this form, and it is a way to educate men on how to protect themselves, protect each other, and protect their women and children. So, right, especially the farther back we go, the more we will see something that is written specifically with this kind of let's say man-to-man or male-facing orientation. And that is what we see here, right? This is an anthropocentric account, but it is one in which, let's say, things come into being from the perspective of a man, right? So from a man's perspective, first we have, let's say, food and provision and everything that is good all around him. This comes into being first. And then what comes into being second, but man's ability to subject things to his will, right? To go out, to meet animals, to take living things, to entrain them, to dominate them, to make them to serve him. And then it is only after these first two steps, then does man come into contact with woman, right? Which is said in this, right? It's not specifically said in the text that he's created, but that it is, well, we do have this made thing here. So let's take a look. Let's read. And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, that is, the first man, Adam, he of the earth, the Adamah, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. And Adam said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. What is very notable about this is the continuation of the theme that we saw expressed in this idea of God's creation of animals to serve as helpmeets for Adam, someone who is contradictorily complementary to Adam here. And immediately as woman is made from the flesh of man, there is an idea that man and woman are really one body. This is a statement. This is something that a perspective that these stories wish to impart, that man and woman are really part of one greater whole. There is not a man and a woman, but a man and his wife. That a man ought to see woman not as some other, something separate, something else, a different manner of creature, but rather something that is of the same substance that he is, right? Bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh, made from him, and therefore to be embraced as his own body, right? So there is an idea that is very powerful here, right? That man ought to view woman as a part of himself in this relationship of husband and wife, right? Not a possession to be had, and certainly not for there to be more than one of them, right? This is an important claim. This is an important theme that's going to go through the entire book of Genesis. Man is made on two different accounts, right? These are two different creation accounts where both are of the standpoint that the natural order of things, the created order of things, the manner in which the cosmos has come into being from this divine source which lies beyond space and time, creates and has created man and woman, just one of them. They exist in a dyad, a duo, that are part of a greater whole. So interesting to consider this today, to reflect on this. Maybe a chance to consider our own personal standpoints toward toward the natural state of man and woman, and what it means to be fully human, perhaps, is something separate than just the individual. Something to think about. But let's go ahead and turn our attention over to our article for the day, our discussion of September OPEX. Before we do, we will go ahead and take a look at our gratitude. Today's gratitude once again goes out to Chan Yang Lee, maybe my friend from Christian Heritage, maybe my friend from middle school, all the way from Kazakhstan. If that's you, Chan Yang Lee, thank you for sponsoring today's letter and newsletter and video breakdown. If that is not you, well, thank you, other Chan Yang Lee. And then a great thanks to our monthly supporters, Not Medical Advice, Kurt Lesko, Cosmotropic, DaySpike52, and Hey Luckies. Certainly looking forward to seeing you guys and everyone else at this evening's live stream. I think we're going to get started a little bit earlier. Probably going to go live maybe about an hour before market close. I like doing that. I actually liked getting that started a little earlier. It felt a little bit fresher when we did that going into earnings last week. So I think we're going to start about an hour earlier this week. We'll still go after market close, but good to get that started as such. Yeah, so really interesting here to see this kind of emerge as I was sitting down to write, seeing our action here pre-market. Very, very flat day, sideways, kind of hanging out there, really looking like this type of gamma pin situation. Certainly, if you are a day trader, this was a very fun time for you. Things just kind of hanging out mostly in that lower VWAP channel, couple of channel reversals there. But by and large, right, hanging out just kind of above that 26 level, getting that nice 2650, very, very high rate of change in delta as we're getting close to the end of OPEX here. Good liquidity, obviously, on those contracts. So day traders certainly very happy with this this type of setup here. And then what comes in toward the end of the day, but a little bit of a dump pushing us below 26. Now, this is something, and we see this here pre-market, taking us down to 25.61. This is something I've been thinking about all week, right? We know there are very large options positions at $26 and $25. Generally speaking, when we have a very large options position like that, when we have something like a call wall built up around a big whole dollar strike like $25, we will see, try as it may, we will see somehow the price before deadline for OPEX, we will see the price transpose down, seemingly up to the last minute in order to bring those positions out of the money. I would not be surprised if we see something like this today, and I see something like this being set up by moving the price into the sub 26 level. It's coming out of the, let's say, gamma pin kind of texture up here between 27 and 26, and is really moving into this area where $26 is going to serve as something that will keep our price depressed. Why is that? Well, if we come down here and take a look at our gamma exposure for today, we can see this $26 position has a very large net notional amount of call gamma exposure to the market maker. What this typically means, now usually a good rule of thumb is that the options market, that is traders, tend to be long calls, right? So in the case of GameStop is extremely call skewed, and it tends to be skewed in terms of long calls at most positions. That's not necessarily true. That may be less so the case in more recent weeks versus maybe what we saw last year or any of these periods where Roaring Kitty was bringing a lot of excitement to the stock. But it is generally still a good rule of thumb to assume that most calls are going to be long, even if the margins between what calls are short and long are narrower than they would be otherwise. And what we can see here, right, 26, this is our call wall. This did move up from 25 to 26 about midweek. And while we were above this strike, it means, and approaching expiry, it means that the charm effect would come in. So that is the rate of change of delta over time, or the change in delta over time, however you'd like to express that. While this position is in the money, it means as we approach expiry, the dealer is going to have to go ahead and purchase the remaining shares, right? So the delta value on that contract is going to increase gradually into the close as the contract ends up in the money. If this position is out of the money, which is now the situation we find ourselves in now, the charm effect is going to set it in such a way that we will have delta decay over time as the day goes on and as this position remains out of the money. That is going to put a gradual downward pressure on our price throughout the day that is going to make it, it's going to give something of a headwind until this level can be surpassed. If, as long as we remain below $26, the dealer is going to be selling shares into the market, is going to be de-hedging that position dynamically. If we do not have a particularly high volume day today, this position may have the effect of pushing our price even closer to 25, in which case something of some interventive shorting could then slip us toward the end of the day just under that $25 position. And all of this OI, right? So this is, I think, a total between 26 and 25. Just these two strikes, over 50,000 contracts will go ahead and close out of the money, which will presumably profit the dealer to a much greater degree than if those contracts were to expire in the money. So I would say that our most likely trading range for today is going to be between these strikes. Obviously, something unexpected can happen. There can be some sort of buying externality that moves us over here. Because this is a monthly OPEX and because this is a broader market-wide quarterly OPEX, right? So this is a really big options expiry this week for the market as a whole. This is, in fact, the most expensive options expiry in history up to this point, right? So right now, SPY is skewed 90% in terms of calls, and there is well over $1 trillion in notional value just in 0 DTE SPY calls expiring today. That is insane. $1 trillion of notional value in 0 DTE SPY calls expires today. Okay, what that means is going into next week, we can expect more volatility in the broader market. Volatility in SPY typically corresponds with a move to the downside. As volatility comes in, downside risk amplifies. That is something that is likely on the docket for next week. I would not be surprised if we saw something of an unstable late September, early October in the broader market. And I would not be surprised if there were an opportunity for institutions to go ahead and take advantage of something similar with GameStop. And if we look at our OI, basically going into next week, we can see just how much lighter OI is compared to this week, right? So as we take a look at OI for this week, we can see, right, $25, 24,000 contracts, $26, 24,000 contracts. Even our half strikes have 7,000, 9,000, 9,500 at 26.5. The $27 position, we're looking at almost 23,000 contracts. As we move down and take a look at what's coming up next week, we don't crack 10,000 on any contract below $30. And even at that, we've just got 2 strikes with over 10,000 contracts in OI. That's 30 and 33. What does that mean? Well, unless a lot of this OI is rolled directly into next week, which is a possibility, we're likely looking at some volatility coming in on GameStop as well. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we're moving to the downside. If there are something like institutional interest rate derivatives that need to be priced or adjusted sometime next week, right? So Richard Newton talked about this going into the 22nd of September. This is now, back before he left YouTube. If something like that is coming into play, then that may likely then manifest as a larger move to the downside. There would not be very much in the way of options, basically limiting that move. So we're dealing right now. Next week, we're looking at hedging flows that are going to be about 1/5 the size of the hedging flows that we're dealing with throughout the course of the day today. So I would think something of a gamma pin between 26 and 25 is our most likely move for today. If we do get close to 25, this may open up a window for institutions to go ahead and try and push that $25 position out of the money. I think if an institution is going to go ahead and adopt this type of strategy, I would not be surprised if we see something like a small spike off the open up close to 26 to really juice gamma values at 26. I would then expect something, if we see that, like a lot of sold calls to come in at the bid at 26 at the money, to really take advantage of that charm, that delta decay over time throughout the day to the max. And maybe even push the price below $25. As another sort of secondary sign, we did see XRT go ahead and triple its shares outstanding this week. This is usually a sign that the fund is being used to create liquidity for lending purposes, presumably of GME, although it is hard to say definitively one way or another whether that be the case. So that's my outlook going into today. Of course, we'll have to evaluate this as we tonight on live stream. Definitely looking forward to seeing everybody then. As always, good luck out there with your trades. Obviously, still bullish on GameStop in the long term, but very cautious going into this week, certainly, and cautious for some extended volatility perhaps next week before we get ready to start moving up. I think into that warrant ex-dividend date on October 3rd and the dividend issuance date on October 7th. So, thanks very much as always for watching and listening. We will see you guys at Livestream tonight, 3 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be a good time. We'll see you then. Take care.